Savitri is explaining to Death about how things really are. The divine presence in everything. And now she's speaking about nature. What seems to us unconscious nature. What is she really doing? So I'm going to go back to line 134, just so that we've got the continuity. The mighty mother her creation wrought, a huge caprice, self-bound by iron laws, and shut God into an enigmatic world. She lulled the omniscient into nescient sleep. Omnipotence on inertia's back she drove, trod perfectly with divine unconscious steps the enormous circle of her wonder works. Immortality assured itself by death. The Eternal's face was seen through drifts of time. His knowledge he disguised as ignorance. His good he sowed in evil's monstrous bed, made error a door by which truth could enter in. His plant of bliss watered with sorrow's tears. 1,000 aspects point back to the one. A dual nature covered the unique. In this meeting of the Eternal's mingling masks, this tangled dance of passionate contraries, locking like lovers in a forbidden embrace, the quarrel of their lost identity. Through this wrestle and wrangle of the extremes of power, Earth's million roads struggled towards deity. All stumbled on behind a stumbling guide. Yet every stumble is a needed pace on unknown routes to an unknowable goal. All blundered and straggled towards the one divine. As if transmuted by a Titan spell, the eternal powers assumed a dubious face. Idols of an oblique divinity, they wore the heads of animal or troll, assumed ears of the fawn, the satyr's hoof, or harbored the demoniac in their gaze. A crooked maze they made of thinking mind. They suffered a metamorphosis of the heart, admitting vacant revelers from the night into its sanctuary of delights, as in a Dionysian masquerade. On the highways, in the gardens of the world, they wallowed, oblivious of their divine parts. as drunkards of a dire Circean wine, or a child who sprawls and sports in nature's mire. Quite mysterious, huh? Who will start? Rosa? Immortality. 2 lines.
Immortality assured itself by that the eternal space was seen through drifts of time.
Yes. We noticed last time as we were reading many paradoxical statements, apparently contradictory statements, that are there to make us go beyond our normal ways of thinking and see things in a deeper way. So, what the fulfillment of this manifestation is aiming at immortality, that we should all evolve at least to the consciousness of immortality, if not the full physical state of immortality. But this process takes place by death, by leaving this body because it's not responsive enough to the higher truth, and taking on another one again and again and again. Our immortality, our inner immortality, assures itself through this process of dying and being reborn. The Eternal's face was seen through drifts of time. There's a contradiction or an opposition between eternity and time. We think of eternity as being beyond time, but the Eternal expresses himself in many different forms and figures in time. I think on Sunday morning we were reading about the Eternal being timeless in the timeless, in time ever born. He's born again and again and again in all the forms of the universe. So we glimpse his face through these drifts, these clouds and veils of passing time. Anandi?
His knowledge he disguised as ignorance. His good he showed in evil's monstrous birth, made a door by which truth could enter in. His plant of bliss watered with sorrow's tears.
So the Supreme works through everything, no? He disguises his eternal omniscience in evolution, in the manifestation, in many forms of ignorance. But in many forms of ignorance. But there couldn't even be ignorance if there weren't the knowledge behind, disguised. No? Good. He is aiming only for the good for all, the best for all. But he finds ways to plant seeds of good in a bed, like a flower bed, that seems to be only full of evil. He can plant his seeds of good there. He can make error the way that we human beings, to err is human. No? We are making mistakes all the time because with our ignorant minds, we can't see things as they really are. So we don't know how to make right choices. So to err is human. But He, the Lord, makes error a door through which truth can enter in. Even through our mistakes, He leads us towards the truth, or allows the truth to come to us. And He's like a gardener nurturing this plant of bliss, of pure, unalloyed bliss. But to help it to grow, He waters it with our tears, the tears of sorrow.
These three lines, just resembles Asatoma, Satkamaya, Tamasoma, Jyotirgamaya, Nityoma, Amatana, Upanishads.
Yes. So that you have to explain, not everybody knows what it means, no? Tamasoma, from the darkness, lead me to the light. From the non-existence to the existence. Through death to eternal life.
A thousand aspects point back to the one. A dual nature covered the unique.
Yes. So the one is at the origin and end of everything, but He shows Himself in 1,000 aspects. Not only 1,000, many, many more. No, but we can glimpse Him through these many, many, many uncountable number of aspects. They all point back to the origin. And the unique, that soul, one, is covered up by a dual nature, a nature which deals with dualities, contradictions. The nature of our mind is such that we can hardly escape from dualities. If we say yes to one thing, we find that we're saying no to something else. Nature is dual in another way also. Nature is dual because there's this, we can say, lower, apparently unconscious nature, although it's as if this unconscious nature is being guided by a perfect consciousness. But there's also a divine nature which we're not so aware of, and these are two aspects of one truth and one force and one power.
Shraddhavan,
Yes.
using this line, the He.
This is the eternal. Yeah, Dr. Nadkarni used to say the three most difficult words in Savitri are he, she, and it. So you always have to look back a bit and find out. Martin.
In this meeting of the Eternal's mingling mass, this tangle dance of passionate contraries, locking like lovers in a forbidden embrace, the quarrel of their lost identity. Through this wrestle and wrangle of the extremes of power, Earth's million roads struggled towards deity.
This is what is going on. No? There's a meeting of all these disguises, masks. Of course, we have a different spelling of this word, which means a face that you put over your own face to disguise your identity. But if many people do that and dress themselves up and hide their faces, disguise themselves, and form a dance or a drama, that is called a mask with this French spelling, Q-U-E-S. So the Eternal, the Lord, is expressing himself through many masks, and they are moving and dancing and mingling. They join each other, they part again. It's all very confusing. He says it's a tangled dance. Tangle, it's when you go out on the motorbike and your hair gets all tangled and you can't get the comb through it. It's a dance that's like that. Everything is inextricably tied up with everything else. A tangled dance of passionate contraries. Each side believes it's right, the opposites. But they are joined together, these passionate contraries. They are like lovers in a secret, forbidden embrace. What they are doing actually is bringing together the quarrel of their lost identity. Actually, all these things are aspects of the One, and it's only because that knowledge of the One and that sense of the One has been lost that they quarrel and dispute, and each one wants to prevail over all the others.
All contraries prepare for me somewhere.
In book 3, Canto 2, yes. So, through all this confusion, this mingling, this locking and quarreling, this wrestle and wrangle. A wrangle is also a kind of quarrel. You want to have something and somebody wants to take it away from you. This is all going on between the extremes of power, different aspects of divine force. And through all this confusion, Earth's million roads, all the uncountable number of roads, they're all struggling. They're struggling towards deity, a divine conclusion. We can watch it going on all around us. Ganga Lakshmi.
All stumble on behind a stumbling guide, yet every stumble is a needed pace on a no route to an unknowable goal.
Go on, one more line.
Okay. All blundered and struggled towards the one divine.
A marvelous line. Oh, blundering. You don't know where you're going. It's dark. You bang into things, trip over things, blundering and straggling. This means that not everybody's moving together. It's not a cohesive movement. There are people moving in all different directions and getting lost and getting left behind. Everything is blundering and straggling on towards the one divine. It's a very nice description of what's happening in evolution. Yet, every stumble is a needed pace. A stumbling guide. I'm not sure who this stumbling guide is. But anyway, it's a guide with a capital G, some power. No? Yet every stumble is a needed pace. Every mistake that we make is something that's necessary for our progress. It's a needed step. A pace is a step on these unknown routes these million roads to an unknowable goal. We can't know the goal. It's not only unknown, it is unknowable. It's something that's beyond the capacity of our mind to find. But it's all blundering and straggling towards the one divine.
Arnold Ponde said the stumbling man is the mind.
Yes, I think it would be the mind, the stumbling guide. Yes. Who said?
Dr. Arnold Ponde.
Dr. Pandey said, yes. It looks to me as if it should be the mind. And now he's going to speak about the way that the divine powers disguise themselves to our human perception, or are disguised to our human perception. I can't see who's behind there. It's Sarojini. Yes, would you read Sarojini?
As if transmuted by a titan spirit, the eternal powers assumed a dubious face, adults of an oblique divinity. They were the heads of animals or trolls, assumed years of their fall. The
satyrs,
or hot-bound harmony in their gaze.
Yes, we'll pause there. It's a long sentence. So the eternal powers, it's as if they've been put under an enchanter's spell. Somebody's done black magic and changed their appearance. They put on a dubious face, a very doubtful, ambiguous, ununderstandable appearance. They appear as idols. An idol is a figure of which represents a divinity. These forms which they take are idols of an oblique divinity. It's not coming directly, it's showing itself in an indirect way. This reminds us of the old images we know from history, or the history of art, that the forms that human beings imaged the gods in. They gave them animal heads, or trolls. Trolls are beings of earth. They're in the Scandinavian mythology. They're somehow made of rock, but they can become alive at night. But as soon as there's a gleam of light, they turn back into stone again. And they're quite unpleasant beings. Or they wear fawn's ears. A fawn is a wood spirit, a forest spirit, and he has little pointed ears like an animal, a fawn. Or he has hoofs like a goat, the satyr's hoof. These are semi-divine beings that we find in the different mythologies. Fauns and satyrs, they are in the Greek and Latin mythology. And they may even, in their way of appearance, they may seem to be demons. They may seem to be evil spirits. There's something terrifying and terrible in their gaze. So these eternal powers, in the course of evolution, in the course of development and in human consciousness, they appear not always divine.
A crooked maze they made of thinking mind. They suffered a metamorphosis of the heart, admitting vacant revelers from the night into its sanctuary of delight, as in a Dionysian masquerade.
So here we've got this mask again, masquerade, a procession of people who are disguised and dressed up. So they are eternal powers, but they are disguised. They've got on this dubious face, no? And they confuse us. They make our thinking mind, which is meant to be a light, they make it into a crooked maze. A maze is a kind of garden, actually, with hedges. The hedges are allowed to grow very tall so that you can't see where you're going. And between them run paths going in all directions. So just for fun, you are invited to enter into the maze and see if you can get to the center and get out again. And very often people get lost, and So a crooked maze, it's a kind of labyrinth where you can't find your way. They've turned our thinking mind into something like that. Very, very confusing. They've also allowed, here I think the word suffered is used in the sense to allow. They have allowed a change in the heart. Metamorphosis. It means a change of shape, a change of form. And they are also allowing, admitting, letting in these revelers, these people who are partying wildly. They're having a wild party. It allows those revelers, those crazy beings, to enter into the heart, out of the darkness of the night, into the heart's sanctuary of delights. The heart is the center of the emotional being, and there it shelters all different kinds of delight and bliss. But these wild revelers can also come in. And then he says, then it's like a Dionysian masquerade. We have the word bacchant, and Dionysian. These two adjectives are equivalent. Dionysus in Greek is the god of wine, and he was worshipped with drunken revels, so far as we can make out, mainly by women dancing wildly. And the name of that same god in the Roman religion was Bacchus, the god of wine. So a bacchant is a female worshipper of that god. And the Greek word is a Maenad, the worshipper of Dionysus. That word also occurs in... So these are kinds of ecstatic religion which nowadays we don't approve of very much, but they have prevailed, and they have been ways of reaching to beyond normal states of intensity and even inspiration. But perhaps these bacchant forms, these Dionysian forms, they are a distortion of the true bliss, the true pure divine bliss. Sergei.
On the highways and the gardens of the world, they wallowed oblivious of their divine parts, as drunkards of a glass of season wine, or a child who sprawls and sports in nature's smile.
Yes. So he says these powers are wandering about on the highways, in the gardens. They are wallowing. Wallowing is what pigs and hippopotamuses do when they find some nice mud. They roll in it and cover themselves. They enjoy it. So nice and cooling, and cover yourself in mud. So this is mire that they're they're wallowing because they have forgotten their divinity, their divine parts. And they are drunk with this dire, this terrible Circean wine. So Circe is an enchantress who comes in the story of Ulysses. On his wanderings, the god of the sea will not allow him to return home. So he wanders for many years, and one of his adventures is to come to an island where it seems to be uninhabited. It seems to be a very delightful island. There are fragrances and beautiful sounds, and well, they've been at sea a long time. At least they would like to have some fresh water. So Ulysses sends a few scouts into the island to scout, to find out. But they don't come back. So then he sends some more, and they don't come back either. And finally, he has to go himself. And then he discovers that in the center of the island there's an open space where there's even a table. And on it are all kinds of absolutely tempting and delicious foods and fruits and drinks. This is the island of Circe. She's an enchantress. And this is how she catches people. She turns them into animals. All his sailors have been turned into animals. So Ulysses, he has to find the way to win her over, to gain power over her, so that he can get his sailors back and they can all go away safely, move on safely. So Circean wine, you drink it, it makes you think you're divine, but actually it's turned you into an animal. But then he says, or maybe another and better image of it is the way that a child, a small child, also throws himself into the mud and enjoys it, plays with that in nature's mud. There's a beautiful aphorism where he speaks about having seen a small child all cleaned and dressed up by his mother and adorned, and then that same child sprawling naked in the mud, and in both cases he saw utter purity. With the child who sprawls and sports in nature's mire, dirty mud. So he's been speaking about eternal powers. One of them is wisdom. Joel, would you read?
Even wisdom, viewer of the rules of God, is a partner in the deep, disastrous game. Lost is the pilgrim's wallet and the scribble. She fails to read the map and watch the star.
You can read the next two lines.
A poor self-righteous virtue is her stock, and reason's pragmatic grope, or abstract sight, or the technique of a brief hour's success. She teaches, an usher in utilities school.
Yes. So again, some amazing allusions here. So wisdom, of course, is the highest power that we have access, and wisdom should cut clear ways, to hew. If you are traveling through a thick forest, you may have to hew your way through. Also, if you might have to hew your way through rock. So wisdom is the one who cuts the clear ways of God. The roads can pass through for us. No? But even she becomes a participant, a partner in this game, this terrible, deep, disastrous game. Wisdom lost is the pilgrim's wallet and the scrip. This is one of a couple of allusions in this poem to a book called The Pilgrim's Progress. Anybody has heard of this book? Yeah. It's in our library. You can borrow it and read it. It used to be in England, apart from the Bible, the most read book. And it's the story of someone who becomes aware that he's sinful and ignorant and that he needs to be saved. And the story of his journey, his quest. And there's a beautiful incident that after passing through all kinds of trials and tribulations, he comes to a place of peace. And there he can stay, he's fed and cared for, and he's shown some deep inner truths. And when it's time for him to go on his journey, he's given a wallet, a bag with some provisions in it, something to eat and drink to keep him on the way, and a scrip, which is a map or a guidebook, perhaps, telling him what to look out for, where are the dangers, a guide. But further on his road, he falls asleep when he shouldn't have done. And then he wakes up and it's late in the day and he has to hurry, and he rushes off and he forgets the wallet and the scrip. And later on he has to go back and find them again. So it's like that. Wisdom has lost the proper sustenance and the proper guide. She fails to read the map. She fails to watch the guiding star. She gets lost. Yeah. So what?
So he lost the progress.
Well, it was this too was a needed pace on the road. Every stumble is a needed pace. So it's a part of the story, and through it he progresses. No? But in this case, talking about wisdom, if wisdom loses the wallet and the scrip, if she fails to read the map, then a poor, self-righteous virtue is her stock. There are prescriptions for how to be good. And if you follow them, then you tend to believe that you are really good. You are self-righteous, and you look down on other people who are not following the same prescriptions. No? Poor, self-righteous virtue. You think you are virtuous and other people are not. And another thing, that is not really wisdom. That's a law or something that might be passed down, that this is the way to do it. Or reasons, pragmatic grope. Groping is when you can't see, it is dark and you have to feel your way. So our reason sometimes is like that. It's groping in the dark, and it's doing it by trial and error. It follows what works, what seems to be useful. Or abstract sight. There's a higher aspect of our reason which follows abstract thinking. If that gets divorced from reality, it's also not much help. So these are ways in which wisdom, which should be our guide and light, gets perverted and distorted. Or wisdom teaches us techniques for a brief hour's success, something that will work for a time. That's what she teaches. Or perhaps she's not even a proper teacher. She's just an usher. Long ago in schools, the teachers used to have a kind of assistant who kept order, made sure that people didn't disturb things, and did their homework properly. In utility school, so wisdom is not really giving the higher light which it should. It's just teaching you how not to get into trouble or how to have a brief hour's success.
Talking about she, I'm really surprised she is wisdom. No?
She is wisdom.
Yeah,
Sophia.
Usually Aurobindo doesn't use she or he for this kind of thing. I'm really surprised.
Well, it's personification, which happens in poetry. Yes, he needs, if he's going to say, give us these pictures, it is no use, no?
It's true. Yeah.
I think I would like to stop there today. Anybody? It's a difficult passage, isn't it? With many allusions and complicated pictures. If anybody wants to ask anything.
I would like to ask, because I haven't been here regularly enough doing my homework, where are we in his generalized statement? He's saying the eternal powers assumed a dubious...
This is she. Savitri is describing. Death has painted for her a dreadful picture of our life. The unreality, the futility, the uselessness of the universe as a whole. And Savitri is showing him that it's not really like that. So that even these negative aspects, all this stumbling and straggling and blundering, even all these distortions of the divine powers, all of them are a necessary part of the picture.
So when he's saying assumed, or she is...
He's saying assumed.
She says in the course of evolution is what...
Yes.
That's what that
Yes. Yes. In this a very confusing world where so many things are emerging and emerging blindly, still. But she's acknowledging the negative aspect of it. There are these negative aspects. Yes, really, they are there. Let's recognize them. But let's recognize that maybe this is just an infant, a child, sprawling and sporting in nature's maya, rolling about and enjoying the messy part of nature. And she is going to continue about wisdom, knowledge, how we will come to a greater light. Perhaps we can read that next time.
Immortality assured itself by death. The Eternal's face was seen through drifts of time. His knowledge he disguised as ignorance. His good he sowed in evil's monstrous bed, made error a door by which truth could enter in. His plant of bliss watered with sorrow's tears. 1,000 aspects point back to the one. A dual nature covered the unique. In this meeting of the Eternal's mingling masks, this tangled dance of passionate contraries, locking like lovers in a forbidden embrace, the quarrel of their lost identity. Through this wrestle and wrangle of the extremes of power, Earth's million roads struggled towards deity. All stumbled on behind a stumbling guide, yet every stumble is a needed pace on unknown routes to an unknowable goal. All blundered and straggled towards the one divine. As if transmuted by a Titan spell, the eternal powers assumed a dubious face. Idols of an oblique divinity, they wore the heads of animal or troll, assumed ears of the fawn, the satyr's hoof, or harboured the demoniac in their gaze. A crooked maze they made of thinking mind. They suffered a metamorphosis of the heart, admitting bacchant revellers from the night into its sanctuary of delights, as in a Dionysian masquerade. On the highways, in the gardens of the world, they wallowed, oblivious of their divine parts, as drunkards of a dire Circean wine, or a child who sprawls and sports in nature's mire. Even wisdom, hewer of the roads of God, is a partner in the deep, disastrous game. Lost is the pilgrim's wallet and the scrip. She fails to read the map and watch the star. A poor, self-righteous virtue is her stock, and reason's pragmatic grope or abstract sight, or the technique of a brief hour's success she teaches, an usher in utility's school.